Beloved in the Seventh-day Adventist Church, beloved in the Seventh-day Adventist Church, this is a very urgent message, very urgent message called a firm stance for the present truth and a denial of the Omega apostasy. Now here in Desire of Ages, the chapter called He Must Increase, it states, for a time the Baptist influence over the nation have been greater than that of its rulers, priests, and princes. If he had announced himself as a Messiah and raised a revolt against Rome, priests and people would have flocked to his standard. Every consideration that appeals to the ambition of the world's conquerors, Satan had stood ready to urge upon him. Upon John the Baptist. But with the evidence before him of his power, he had steadfastly refused a splendid bribe. The attention which was fixed upon him he had directed to another. Now he saw the tide of popularity turning away from himself to the Savior. Day by day the crowds about him lessened. When Jesus came from Jerusalem to the region about Jordan, the people flocked to hear him. The number of his disciples increased daily. Many came for baptism, and while Christ himself did not baptize, he sanctioned the administration of the ordinance by his disciples. Thus he set his seal upon the mission of his forerunner. But the disciples of John looked with jealousy upon the growing popularity of Jesus. Beloved, in the Adventist Church, this is taken from Desire of Ages, a chapter called He Must Increase, about John the Baptist. Now, beloved, my ministry is called Voice Crying in the Wilderness. The reason why I called it that ministry, named it that, was because my ministry is to give a straight testimony to Laodicea within the Adventist Church. My ministry is to call people out of Laodiceanism within the Adventist Church. My ministry is to tell them to come out of Babylon within the apostate Protestant world so they will not receive the 7 last plagues and to unite with the image of the beast. I've been told by many among the Seventh-day Adventist church leaders, you're hobby horsing. You're dealing with women's ordination, the Sunday surge, and ecumenicalism, and new theology. That's hobby horsing. That's staying upon one point, and that's fanatical. And we don't want you to look like a fanatic. Well, Fundamentals of Christian Education, page 396, states this and says, when the standard is lifted up among Seventh-day Adventists, worldlings will consider them to be odd, singular, straight-laced, extremist fanatics, beloved in the Adventist Church. And Sister White says in Testimony of Church, volume 6, that false education leads people away until they become educated worldlings. Well, these worldlings that are endorsing evolution, new theology, women's ordination, the Sunday surge, which are really postmodernistic prisms that teach the historical, cultural, grammatical method, which says that there's no absolute truth, that whatever is right in your eyes is right in your eyes, whatever is right in my eyes is right in my eyes. Beloved in the Adventist Church, this is apostasy. This must not be done, beloved in the Adventist Church. And this is the attitude of many of our General Conference, North American Union, local conference, and local church leaders who support these apostasies, beloved. And you know, John the Baptist, he went through this. He was honored. He was honored by the people in his day. And he could have took the kingship of his day. But he said no to it. He said, I'm going to be the moral voice for the Jewish nation. I'm not going to receive honor of men. I'm going to reject it. Now, beloved, when I finished Oakwood, I was asked by a conference president to serve as a pastor. I was honored by the Oakwood University crowd at graduation. The whole crowd erupted for me. I felt good to have the honor and respect of my colleagues in ministry and colleagues at Oakwood. But beloved, I rejected pastoral ministry within the Seventh-day Adventist Church because I much rather receive rejection, persecution, martyrdom, disrespect, reproof for standing for faithful to principle in God's church and receive honors, pastoral position among men, and lots of money. Beloved in the Adventist Church, he must increase, but I must decrease, beloved in the Adventist Church. I must give the straight testimony. I must do it in a loving, humble, meek way. I'm praying for those who have come on my page recently telling me that I'm mistreating leadership in the Adventist Church because I'm talking about their apostasy, beloved. The book Last Day Events states in the book Early Writings that the sin-loving multitudes will revile and persecute those who talk about sin in the church, and the leaders, like the Pharisees of old, will be angry when their authority is questioned. What authority are they questioning? They're questioning the authority of teaching lies on the pulpit, the dancing, the jewelry, the new theology, no victory over sin, woman's ordination, the atonement in the cross, and did not begin 1844 after the sacrificial atonement on the cross and beginning the Day of Atonement on 1844 of investigative judgment for the righteous dead. No victory over sin. They're angry that their authorities question to teach these lies to the people. They're angry at the Bible and the spirit of prophecy is being exalted through the self-supporting ministry. Ministries like the Voice of the Eternal Gospel that Pastor Maurice Burry, Pastor Rafael Perez, and Pastor Mark are a part of. Ministries like Elder David Gates, who is still preaching the straight testimony. Beloved, it is so sad when self-supporting workers are trying to give the straight testimony and the powers that be the leaders of our people are denying them to preach these truths within much of the conference churches and they're spying upon them on their media pages and trying to shut them down on social media. Now, beloved in the Adventist Church, look right here at Acts chapter 5, verse 29. This is a firm stand that Peter gave to the powers that be in his day that tried to stop him from preaching after he was arrested and put in prison for preaching in his day about them crucifying Christ, and at Pentecost 5,000 repented and the powers would be put in prison for this sermon. Look what happened when the leaders of powers would be said, then we warn you not to preach in this man's name, for you have filled Jerusalem with all your doctrine. Look at what Peter told, Acts 5:29. Then Peter and the other apostles answered and said, in verse 29, we ought to obey God rather than men. I was at Oakwood University, and a lady told me, Lucis, you are not able to attend Oakwood right now and get funding for education because you're preaching against apostasy on social media, and the powers that be in Oakwood are angry that you're talking about the Oakwood University and being an alumnus there, and they don't want to fund your education because of that. Well, beloved, I'd much rather obey God than man. I'd much rather give a straight testimony about the apostasy as a minister than try to get picked up by an apostate sister of Babylon. And the Southern Church is not a daughter of Babylon. It is not teaching a sacredness and immortality of the soul, but it is a sister of Babylon because it mingles with ecumenical dialogue with the man of sin. You see how Pastor Ted Wilson has mingled with the man of sin with Ganoon Diop, kissing up to him and having Ganoon Diop with him for World Youth Day dialogue. You've seen how in our local conferences, our local conference presidents like Pastor Benjamin Jones is dialoguing with the ecumenical movement to invite First Day ministers to come out there and have worship with him. You see how Dr. Jesse Wilson invited T.D. Jakes to speak up there in 2011. Then invite all these apostate Protestant ministers, all these apostate Protestant singers like Kurt Franklin, getting jiggy with Kurt Franklin and Fred Hammond, but they won't invite you to come and sing and preach. They'll invite people like Richard H. Foster, who preaches Separation of Distance, who teaches that, and Robert J. Mulholland, who does Invitation to a Journey. But they won't allow you to give the three angels message in the pulpit. They say, shut up from the three angels message. Shut up from giving a straight testimony. They say, you're fanatical. They say, stop doing it. They say, you're losing your mind. Beloved, they're losing their mind. They're giving a false testimony. It's time for the straight testimony. Isaiah 58:1-2 says, sigh and cry, and lift up thy voice like a trumpet. Tell Israel her sins. Israel is spiritual Israel, the seventh Adventist church, and the 144,000 tell Israel her sins. With the first fruits of the harvest, that go out and get the great multitude, in Revelation 7:9, and give the loud cry and finish the work. Maranatha, God bless. Most congregations, and Father, thank you for this day. Thank you for order, for mercy, and blessings. Please save your people. Please bless all those who come on this page and spy on me and criticize our ministry. Please save them, even through my most bitterest enemies in the courts. Please allow them to have a witness for me for being kind to them in the courts and giving a straight testimony and be won by my testimony. In Jesus Christ, I pray. Amen. God bless you. Maranatha.